All right, guys, we're here, Oversteertv Podcast, with my ever faithful Jeff Brown. Say hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
All right, and I'm Tony Castaneira, and this is the Oversteertv Podcast 3. Three. Can you
Three,
imagine? We've made it our third one.
yeah, 3 weeks in a row.
It's amazing. I'm surprised it even lasted this long with all that money. So guys, welcome. If you watch us on YouTube, feel free to make some comments, ask us some questions. If you think, I'm a jerk, let's hear it. If
Yeah,
you're
I
if you want to
definitely
have
think so.
if you
Yeah,
want to have Jeff Brown's babies, put it down there. I'll make sure he gets it. Uh, like and subscribe. You know the drill. You know the drill.
I'm not making any babies. I can tell you
Well, this week we were going to talk about racing safety. But before we get into that, we had a little big bombshell in IndyCar racing that just fell in our lap a couple hours ago. In case you've missed it, IndyCar decided to disqualify Joseph Newgarden and McLaughlin from their race. Not the race this past week in Long Beach, not the race a couple of weeks ago in Palm Springs, but the first race of the season back on March 10th, the St. Pete Grand Prix. Um, Turns out they had some type of advantage with the push to pass. I'm still trying to get my head around exactly. Supposedly, it's something that they had it for testing, but they were supposed to take off before they started racing, and it gave them a slight advantage at restarts because the push to pass only starts working on a restart when they reach the finish line. That they have an arbitrary finish line they have set up in the track, but apparently McLaughlin and Newgarden had it beforehand before anybody else.
that.
Um, they didn't know that. IndyCar didn't know that. They claimed they discovered it during some looks at the computer back data at Long Beach. So that's why it took so long. And so they've lost their wins, they lost their points, they lost their prize money. Newgarden's running now 11th in the points. McLaughlin is now last in the points of all the regular drivers. Um, Interesting that they would come down that hard. And why did it take so long to catch? I'm sorry, they should have seen that from the telemetry from the during the day of the race that something was going on.
Yeah. Well, they probably did have an indication and they wanted to have a further investigation before they actually ruled on that because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to make a mistake there and take somebody's points away and then find out you were wrong, you know. Because I
Um,
guess the points is the most important thing.
the points are the important thing. I would even venture to say that maybe because how Roger Penske owns the series and that's his team and everything, that
Hmm.
they looked at it, they talked about it, and they go, if anything less than that type of punishment, taking away the win, taking away the points and the money and everything, it takes away any idea of people saying, well, Penske gets special treatment. If
Right.
they just penalize them a couple of points or make them start the back of the next race, some of that people say, oh, that's because it's Penske. Now nobody can complain and say it's Penske. They had the harshest possible, short of a ban, which they ain't gonna happen. Um, you know, it's optics, as they say, to get people
Yeah,
to.
well, it is an unusual situation. It's not often that the you have a owner of
Mhm,
race teams that also owns the series and owns
mhm,
the racetracks, and
mhm,
it's very unusual. It doesn't usually happen like NASCAR. The France family didn't race; they
right.
just ran the races, so they didn't
Mhm,
have a dog in the fight.
mhm. The closest thing I could compare this to was remember when good old Bernie Ecclestone ran F1?
Hmm.
And in the beginning, when he started taking over running the series, he also had the Brabham team. And there were a couple of times where the Brabham team said, okay, listen, we're not going to do this because we don't want to make it seem like we have a special advantage because Bernie's running the series. Eventually, he ended up selling the team because he just couldn't, it didn't look right, him running a team.
That's a conflict of interest, really.
Yeah. Um, Tim Cindric came out and said, we didn't know that there was a mistake. We should have seen it and everything. Um, Oh, I know. I bet you Penske's really pissed right now.
Yeah, well, I just don't see it as a mistake. You know, the Penske team is the top team
Right.
in really any form of racing,
Mm-hmm.
and for them to like kind of overlook that, I don't.
No.
I think
No.
they knew they had the advantage. They're trying to play it off now.
Yeah, because racing today is as soon as the race is over, they download all the telemetry. They know everything's going on. They reload the stuff every time they go out there. Somebody knew. Somebody,
Yeah,
I don't know if Roger Penske knew. I don't know if Tim Cindric knew, but somebody in that garage at Penske knew, and either deliberately said it or didn't think. Um, I don't
it
know. I
could have
have
been
no.
an oversight, but they knew it was. They knew that that situation was there.
Yeah, maybe they thought, oh, that's no big deal or something. I don't know. I'm
Well,
not
they
the.
might not have discovered it until it was kind of too late, and then
Mm,
they kind of hoped that it maybe didn't get noticed. But I
mm.
guess it did get noticed.
Yeah.
So they
Either
have to give
way,
the trophy back.
bad Penske, bad Penske.
A little slap on the wrist.
Yeah. Well, this isn't much of a slap on. This is more than a slap on the wrist. Taking
Yeah.
away those points, and that's costing them a lot of money. Not just the prize money, but the points. The
And the
championship.
integrity of the series, because
Yes,
that's
exactly.
probably the most important thing is that you have to have the integrity of the series.
Yeah. And I
It's
know
like
we're
a
gonna doing a show.
basketball player that just got banned from basketball for life because he was betting on basketball
Oh yeah.
games that he was playing in.
Oh yeah.
It's like Joe Rose kind of thing.
No, well, yeah, it's funny because I've noticed a lot of people I know are like that because of this change that they're like, wait a minute, I had money because now Pato Award from McLaren is the winner now, St. Pete, and they bet money on Pato Award because you can bet on IndyCar in Las Vegas and other
Ah,
places, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, I won now, so
you got to go back to Vegas and say, hey, I
yeah.
wonder how they're going to handle that.
Well, I wonder how many people are going to keep their receipts from the bets
Yeah,
that they
they probably
lose.
lifted them and threw them away, right?
Yeah, yeah, uh,
Wow. That does open a big can of worms, doesn't it?
yep. It's not like it's not like NFL or NBA gambling, but I'm sure there are a few people who bet on IndyCar, and obviously they do if they have books for it. And well, I know we're
And I said Joe Rose. I meant to say Pete
Pete
Rose.
Rose. Oh yeah, yeah.
Joe Rose was just a second string uh, uh, tight end for the Miami Dolphins, whose claim to fame was catching Dan Marino's first touchdown pass. But he was pretty disgruntled when Shula cut him from the team. But that's beside the point.
We got to do a podcast about the Dolphins just to let you vent.
Yeah, I think so. First
um,
thing is we attack Buckethead Joe Rose.
we're planning on doing a show just on IndyCar and all its ills and everything, so we're not going to go much farther with this IndyCar story today. Um, except
And
one
I'm
of the
sure there's
things.
more things that'll come to light with that too.
Oh, I'm sure. I won't be surprised if somebody gets fired because of it from the Penske organization.
Yeah, there's going to be a fall guy there. Somebody's going to have to fall on the sword there.
Mm-hmm. So, uh, anyway, this show we were going to talk about safety in motorsports. I remember we were talking earlier, and you were asking me, you were texting me, is racing safety safer today than it was before? And I go, obviously it is. I mean,
Obviously.
there's no argument there. My issue with the safety in motorsports isn't even so much that some people claim they go too far, is the fact that in most cases, whenever there's a major step in safety, it's a reaction to something that happened. It's never proactive.
Right.
Okay. NASCAR didn't want anybody using, nobody wanted to use the Hans device until Dale Earnhardt died.
Yes.
He would be alive. He would, if he had been wearing the Hans device, he'd probably be alive today,
Yeah.
having his own podcast.
He would definitely be retired right now, that's for sure.
Yes. everything from the halo to the aero screen in IndyCar happened because somebody got hurt or somebody died worse.
Yeah,
Because
that was a tire hit him. I think it was at Pocono.
yeah, it was oh god, Justin Wilson,
Justin
it was a
Wilson.
piece of carbon fiber from another accident in front of him hit him and killed him.
I thought it was
Um,
a tire. The
yeah,
whole time it came
yeah.
and hit him.
The halo is for a tire from an F1. Um, the safer Barry also was just people were just killing themselves at Indy, running into the wall. Uh, the padding on Formula cars on the sides of the head that happened also because of Ayrton Senna's accident and before they had the Hans device that was they were doing for that. Um, but that's my thing. It's nowadays I guess they do, but before they never really nobody ever said, okay, this is getting too dangerous. Let's do something about it. They waited until somebody got hurt before they could do something about it.
Well, a lot of times you don't know there's a problem until there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But with the open cockpit cars and your head
Mm-hmm.
sticking out, that's
Mm-hmm.
that
Well,
was bound to happen.
yeah. I going back to Dale Earnhardt and the Hans device. I think the Hans device had been around for a while, and
Yeah.
even some other series were even starting to use it, but nobody in NASCAR was using. I think one driver was using something similar to the Hans device, and that was it. A lot of it was like, oh, I love the argument. Oh, I can't see, I can't turn my head as much. You're doing 200 miles in Daytona, 200 miles an hour in Daytona. You're not like looking over your shoulder, okay? It was like that was like a really stupid argument and everything, and
Well, the
nobody
thing
was
with
wearing
Dale
it because
Earnhardt was he kind of shunned all that safety equipment. They had come out with seats
mm-hmm,
that were safer, and he still used like an old regular car seat with
right,
springs in it and stuff.
right.
He didn't want to use any of that safety stuff.
Yeah, he was
And
even still
it
using an
cost
open
him his
faced
life.
helmet.
A lot of our greatest drivers, like you just said, Ayrton Senna died while racing.
Mm-hmm,
Dale Earnhardt died while racing. This year, and those, in my opinion, are two of the greatest race car drivers that ever lived.
mm-hmm,
But once those things happen, then you have to address it.
mm-hmm,
And I think the Ayrton Senna one was pretty much the fault of Formula One because they had the suspension systems that were computerized traction uh, suspension systems,
mm-hmm,
and they had those suspension systems that helped you get through the corners and things like that. And then the first race, where after
mm-hmm,
they outlawed them, Ayrton Senna died because he went into the turn and the car wouldn't handle the turn that he
mm-hmm.
would normally go through easily.
Well,
And
Well, I remember it took them years to finally figure out, and even then, they still argue exactly what happened. But now the consensus is that they was using and the steering wheel and the whole steering system that they set up there. Senna didn't like it, and they wanted to move the steering wheel a little. I forgot if we wanted a little bit higher, a little bit lower, and so they cut it and re-welded it. Apparently, that weld was wrong, was done poorly. Um, and then when he went to turn, the suspension bottomed out, and he tried to, because of what you were saying, and when he tried to turn, the steering broke. And
ah,
so by then he was just along for the ride. And
yeah.
then when they hit the wall, the suspension broke off and hit him in the head, and the tire and everything, and that was it. He never knew what
And
hit him.
see, these drivers like Ayrton Senna and Dale Earnhardt, they had so much power in the series
Mm-hmm.
that they could just defy everyone and say, "No, this is the way I'm going to do it. We're going to weld it this way, or I'm going to put my seat belts in this certain way,"
Mm-hmm.
which caused their deaths.
Mm-hmm.
But they had so much power in the series that nobody would defy them.
Right. Right.
NASCAR wouldn't stand up to Dale Earnhardt and say, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
you have to run this Hans device." They did that after he died with all the drivers.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember there was a big issue with the seat belts. Simpson,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Bill Simpson ran the Simpson, and most of the safety equipment back in the day was all Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
And after Dale Earnhardt died and evidently his seatbelt ripped, and it was determined the way that he had it installed, that, I mean, Bill Simpson was getting death threats, and he eventually closed up shop and said, I'm not going to do this anymore because,
Well, yeah. Well, actually, that's even funnier because he had already sold the company, but he was still getting death threats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was not his fault at all. No. He was the champion of safety in all motorsports. You had Simpson helmets, you had Simpson seatbelts, Simpson, fire suits, and he was the guy that said,
the guy.
"Hey,
he was famous.
We got to make it safer."
Yeah, he was the guy famous for when he came up with his first fire suit. He literally sat in a chair and they put gas and set him on fire to show that this will give you.
Right.
The guy walked the walk.
Yeah, and then because of that one incident, he was forever banished by everyone. We would call it cancel culture nowadays. He was canceled.
Right. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, a lot of fans are idiots. There's always been that thing. Like I'm a big fan of the history of the sport, and I think back in the early '70s, Jackie Stewart fighting for safety. I remember there was a race, a Spanish Grand Prix. It was like a street circuit, and it had Armco, those metal barriers all around, and they went out there and they weren't even bolted in. So any driver went in there.
Formula One is the slowest to make changes for safety. I remember Formula One races where guys would wreck and safety crews would be on the track and they wouldn't even throw a caution flag.
Yeah, road courses
guys used to run over and they wouldn't even slow down.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on.
Well, it used to be for road racing, if you had an accident in a corner, you threw a yellow in the corner, slow down the corner, but the rest of the race keep going. Go around.
In fact, this week's Formula One race, guy's engine blows up and he pulls off right in off of a high speed turn, and they threw a yellow flag just for that turn. Cars are going through there at speed, and he finally got out of the car. And I'm thinking these cars are going by in speed, and he's got out of the car. After he walked away, they threw a safety car, and I'm like, wait a minute.
It was a little slow.
Let's let the horses out after the barns burn down.
It was a little slow. It was a little slow.
A little slow.
No series is perfect. I've seen IndyCar take forever to get.
Is the worst for safety. They always have been, in my opinion. I mean,
they are. It's like I said. Everybody, they're all reactive. They're never proactive. I got a question for you. I don't know if you're ready for this or not. What safety feature would you like to see added to racing?
Added to racing. That is a good question. I would probably like to see a windshield like IndyCar has for Formula One. And I remember NASCAR had that roof escape hatch that you could pop out of the top of the car. I don't know if they did away with that or not.
No, they still have it. It's
never really used.
I think it's like a fiberglass thing. You don't see it until you need it, then it pops right out.
Well, I know they have the flaps that keep you from getting upside down.
Right.
It seems like the 200 miles an hour is the line there that you cross. So NASCAR has worked very hard to keep the cars below 200 miles an hour because even with the roof flaps and everything, if you're going 200 or above and you turn around backwards, you're going to probably go airborne. And that's funny that it would seem like an arbitrary number, 200 miles an hour. But, you're going 199 miles an hour and you spin out and the car stays on the ground. You're going 201 mile an hour and you spin out and the car goes that's the whole thing. That's a good question. I think a year or two ago, NASCAR had redesigned the cars and made them stiffer as far as being able to hit a wall and then not much damage done.
Mm-hmm.
And this harkens back to the 60s, where in the 60s they made cars, they were literally like tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And they could go up there and hit the wall and they'd barely have a dent, but the driver would be dead.
Right.
Because all that inertia and all
Mm-hmm.
that energy transferred to the driver.
Mm-hmm.
And they figured out that we need crumple zones. So when this car hits, it's
Mm-hmm.
got to just, crumple up like an accordion.
Right.
And it absorbs all the
Mm-hmm.
impact, and then the driver is okay. And that's what they did. That's why I was so surprised. I think it was 2 seasons ago that NASCAR came out with that next gen car. And I mean, Kurt Busch had to retire because all the drivers were getting concussions. They would hit the wall and all the energy would transfer to them. And of course, they had all the restraints and the Hans and all that. But what it didn't stop was the brain rattling around in the head. It saves their neck from being broken and all that. But your brain hits your skull, and bam, you got a concussion. And there's a few drivers that had to retire because of that car. Now they've went back to the crumple zones. Now I remember this is a funny story. When NASCAR installed the safer barrier walls, Homestead Miami Speedway was the first track to install the safer barrier walls. And I remember we were doing a TV show at the time, and they had Dale Earnhardt Jr. and a couple other drivers come out there in the middle of the week. And on an October, it was actually 2003. I remembered exactly. It was 2003, and we went out and we interviewed Dale Earnhardt Jr. Right there at the bottom of the banking, turn 3 and 4 at Homestead Miami Speedway. I'm not sure if you did the interview or maybe Steve did the interview, but we talked about the safer barrier and what that meant for racing, and that was only 2 years past, Dale Jr.'s father dying. But I remember it was his birthday, and I can tell you, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is a great guy. He, just like you see him on TV and everything, he's that way in person. He is a great guy.
We've both had interactions with him. Nice guy.
He actually, after we did the interview, we're like just standing around, and of course, I'm talking to him. I didn't do the interview because I was behind the camera, but I'm talking to him, and he says, "You guys coming to my birthday party?" I'm like, no. He's like, so he calls this guy over, a publicist or whoever it was, and he says, "We want to add these people to the list of the birthday party." I know you remember this.
Yeah, I went to the party. We went
to the party. We ended up going to South Beach up to a club called Nerve to Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s birthday party on South Beach, which was a blast. But I remember we went into the main bar there, and you had your wife, I had my wife, Steve and his wife. Steve Christensen was one of the co-hosts of the TV show. And we went into the main bar, and they brought out the Coyote Ugly girls that dance up on the bar with the short cutoff jeans and the cowboy boots. And I can remember looking at you and Steve there with your tongues hanging out, and I look over at my wife, and she's mad. All right. So I'm like, well, there's a VIP room right over here with the velvet ropes, and we've got credentials to get in this VIP room. So we go over, you guys are still standing out there drooling over the Coyote girls, and we go into the VIP room, me and my wife, and we go in there, and there's race car drivers in there, Elio Castroneves, Tony Castaneira. There's a lot of IndyCar drivers and stuff that live in Miami that were invited to this party, and they have a bar, and next to the bar is one of those cardboard cutouts of Dale Earnhardt Jr., in his Budweiser racing suit. And in the VIP room, everything was comp. So I'm in there drinking for free. And so, but Dale Earnhardt Jr. was not there. Okay. So there was a couch, L-shaped couch. I know this is a long story, but stay with me. And on the couch was Paul Castronovo, which is the morning guy from Big 105
Right.
He does the morning radio show.
Mm-hmm.
So I recognize him. I go over and we're talking to each other, and we realize that we're missing the Florida Marlins game,
Mm-hmm.
and they were in the playoffs. They were playing the Chicago Cubs, and we were missing this game, sitting there waiting for Dale Earnhardt Jr., who did not show up.
Mm-hmm.
So Paul Castaneira gets up and goes to talk to the manager, and the next thing I know, they bring out an old 19-inch TV, the old style square TV. There was no cable or anything, and it had rabbit ears. But we couldn't get the game to come in, so I went up there and was messing with the rabbit ears behind the TV, and Paul's in front, and he's going, right there, right there. So I had to stand there and hold the rabbit ears while we were watching the game, And this was the game where the foul ball, the guy named Bartman or whatever.
Yeah, Steve Bartman.
Yeah, we watched that there at Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s birthday party.
Yeah, I remember that Dale Jr. showed up, and me and Dale, we drank Budweiser's and watched the game while you're holding the rabbit ears.
No, he hadn't showed up yet. So what happened was the game ended. We won. We won the World Series that year, Florida Marlins. They're Miami Marlins now. So Paul Castaneira, I'm like, well, you got to get up. He's like, I got to get up at 3:30 in the morning to do my morning. I get up at 3, and I'm like, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. He says, I got to go. Him and his wife. So they had to leave before Dale Earnhardt Jr. got there. Mm-hmm. So right after they left, in through the door comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. with this giant entourage of people, and by then my wife and I are standing over by the bar drinking free, mm-hmm. and the couch was there that kind of blocked it. So Dale Earnhardt Jr. spotted us across the room and remembered us and came right to us, me and my wife, Michelle, straight to us, and the whole entourage came with him and crushed. Now, we had gotten a babysitter because this was totally unplanned. We didn't know we were going to Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s birthday party. Mm-hmm. So we had gotten a babysitter, and we also had to leave, just like Paul Castaneira. But I'm like, I'm staying until either, he's coming or not. So he came straight to us. Then we couldn't leave because of the crush of people. And I'm like, Dale, what are you doing to me? We have to leave. And he's like, I'm sorry, and he's signing all these autographs. Everybody there asked for an autograph, So he finally got all the autographs done, and he's still standing there talking to us. And he's like, what about you? You didn't ask for an autograph. And I said, well, we're media. We're not supposed to ask for autographs. It's kind of against the rules. Mm-hmm. So we had the credentials on our, around our neck. So he picked up the credential, signed my credentials, which I still have, with his autograph on it. And then we took a picture. Now we posed for this picture with me and my wife in the middle, mm-hmm. Dale Earnhardt Jr. on one side, and the cardboard cutout of Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the other side. So we have a picture of us posing with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his cardboard cutout, which I thought was a pretty good story. Has nothing to do with safety. Has nothing to do with safety, except that the Homestead Miami Speedway was the first track to have.
Well, I'll show you the connection of safety. Don't drink and drive, people. Don't drink and drive.
Well, it's true. And we won't talk about that.
Anyway, 2 weeks from now.
So that brings me back to the question that you asked. What would I see? I would say something that Kyle Busch said years ago, that no racetrack should have any grass in the infield or anywhere, because when they're wrecking and they hit that grass, the car feels like it actually picks up speed. Mm-hmm. And they actually, like on the backstretch of Talladega, they paved all of that just for that very reason. Mm-hmm. But there's still racetracks that have grass,
right?
That, especially if it's like rained and they drive the track and then they wreck and they get down there and it's just like,
and you have the tires dig in, and boom, next thing you know, they're cartwheeling down the track and everything.
Or sliding and picking up speed and ramming into the wall. So I would say that would be one thing, would get rid of all the grass, mm-hmm. and then cover every wall that's accessible on the track with the safer barriers. There's also tracks that don't have that, like on the interior section of the
Right.
walls. So there's more things they can do, but like you said, they're reactionary, not proactive.
All right. With that, we're gonna have to end this.